On this week's Vaticano, Pope Francis remembers his trip to the Holy Land. We revisit the most important moments of this pilgrimage of peace. We also hit the streets of Jerusalem and Bethlehem to discover how the region's Christians live in a land of conflict. All this coming up on Vaticano. This was the reaction as Pope Francis rolled back into St. Peter's Square for the first time since his trip to the Holy Land. He appeared rested already after having returned 2 days prior, but the visit was still fresh in his memory.
As you know, I have just traveled to the Holy Land as a pilgrim. I thank God and all those who have made it possible. This pilgrimage had 3 purposes. The first was to commemorate the encounter between Pope Paul VI and the Patriarch Athenagoras, which was a prophetic gesture in the difficult but hopeful path towards Christian unity. For that reason, together with the current Patriarch of Constantinople, His Holiness Bartholomew, we have prayed to the Good Shepherd, asking him for the necessary strength to continue with determination towards full communion. The second purpose has been to encourage the peace process in the Middle East. I have wanted to keep everyone in my heart, exhorting them to be peacemakers, and thanking the authorities' efforts on behalf of refugees and their commitment to appease conflicts. I have also invited the presidents of Israel and the Palestinian National Authority to come to the Vatican to pray together for peace. The third reason has been to confirm the faith of the Christian communities, which suffer so much, and to express gratitude to them on behalf of the Church for their courageous presence in the Middle East and for their invaluable testimony of hope and charity.
These Latin American bishops were with Pope Francis for lunch the day after he arrived to Rome.
Estaba muy bien, estaba muy fresco, estaba muy alegre.
He was very well. He was very fresh. He was very happy, and he was very satisfied with his trip. He was also very approachable, as he always is, and we spoke a little bit about all of the important things that are on our minds. Everything that worries and interests the Church right now.
I asked him about his impression. He has returned very happy and very much at peace. He said it has been very intense and moving, that he thinks he has achieved his goals of commemorating the 50 years of the encounter between Paul VI and Athenagoras, and of being a pilgrim in the Holy Land to pray for world peace.
Pope Francis in the Holy Land, with every step intent on promoting peace, reconciliation, and unity in these troubled lands. The Kingdom of Jordan. And here the King and Queen. There he set the pace for the 3-day trip.
While acknowledging with deep regret the continuing grave tensions in the Middle East, I thank the authorities of the kingdom for all that they are doing, and I encourage them to persevere in their efforts to seek lasting peace for the entire region. This great goal urgently requires that a peaceful solution be found to the crisis in Syria, as well as a just solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
From there, it was off to the local soccer stadium, where he celebrated Mass with these more than 20,000 faithful. 1,400 young people received their first communion during the celebration. On apostolic voyages like this one, the objective is also to confirm the people in the faith. And here he did that, even one person at a time. And then a highly symbolic to the Jordan River, where Jesus was baptized. Pope Francis blessed the water, and he met with refugees and the disabled, calling the younger generation to become promoters of a better future.
A voi giovani,
Dear young people, I ask you to join me in praying for peace. You can do this by offering your daily efforts and struggles to God. In this way, your prayer will become particularly precious and effective. I also encourage you to assist, through your generosity and sensitivity, in building a society which is respectful of the vulnerable, the sick, children, and the elderly. Despite your difficulties in life, you are a sign of hope. You have a place in God's heart, and you are in my prayers. I am grateful that so many of you are here, and for your warmth, joy, and enthusiasm. Thank you.
Grazie.
Day 2 started in the Palestinian city of Bethlehem, where a wall now separates locals from Israel. The Pope didn't ignore it. He prayed there, and in his first meeting of the day, he urged Palestine and Israel to reconciliation.
Vorrei dire dal profondo del mio cuore che è ora di
I wish to state my heartfelt conviction that the time has come to put an end to this situation, which has become increasingly unacceptable. For the good of all, there is a need to intensify efforts and initiatives aimed at creating the conditions for a stable peace based on justice, on the recognition of the rights of every individual, and on mutual security. The time has come for everyone to find the courage to be generous and creative in the service of the common good, the courage to forge a peace which rests on the acknowledgement by all of the right of two states to exist and to live in peace and security with internationally recognized borders.
And then it was on to a literal Christmas celebration in May in the city of Jesus' birth, and a meeting with children in a refugee camp where the Pope stayed on message. And then again, upon arriving in Israel, a personal appeal.
Desidero rivolgere un invito a lei, signor Presidente.
I wish to invite you, Mr. President, together with President Mahmoud Abbas, to join me in heartfelt prayer to God for the gift of peace. I offer my home in the Vatican as a place for this encounter of prayer. All of us want peace.
Offro la mia casa in Vaticano per ospitare questo incontro di preghiera. Tutti desideriamo la pace.
They both accepted. As a pilgrim of peace, his aim was to bring down barriers, even those between churches. And that evening, entering Jerusalem and the church that marks the place of Christ's death and resurrection, he met with Orthodox and other Christian leaders and asked for greater unity.
Let us put aside the misgivings we have inherited from the past and open our hearts to the working of the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of love, in order to hasten together towards that blessed day when our full communion will be restored.
This was the main reason for the Pope's trip, 50 years after Pope Paul VI made a similar plea from the same place. The morning of Day 3 dedicated to interfaith relations, first with the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, a Muslim leader, and later with the chief rabbis of the city, inviting them all to improve dialogue and work together for justice and peace. And a visit to the Wailing Wall, sacred to Jews as the only wall still standing of the ancient temple, one of the strongest moments visually of the trip, a public and intimate gesture of reconciliation between Catholics, Jews, and Muslims. Pope left the Our Father prayer written in Spanish in one of the cracks in the wall. Also that morning was this visit to Israel's National Holocaust Memorial. moving visit when he met with Holocaust survivors and said never again to the violence that took the lives of their family members and so many others.
Mai più, Signore. Mai più. Adamo, dove sei?
And the afternoon was dedicated to the Christians of the city. First in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was betrayed and taken off by the authorities to be crucified, the Pope called today's disciples of Christ to be firm in their faith.
La vostra presenza qui è molto importante.
Your presence here is extremely important. The whole Church is grateful to you, and she sustains you by her prayers. From this holy place, I wish to extend my heartfelt greetings to all Christians in Jerusalem. I would like to assure them that I remember them affectionately and that I pray for them, being well aware of the difficulties they experience in this city. I urge them to be courageous witnesses of the passion of the Lord, but also of his resurrection, with joy and hope.
Con gioia e nella speranza.
Then this final Mass with the bishops of Jerusalem on the site of the first Christian community, the Last Supper and Pentecost. And that was it. The Pope left the Holy Land as a pilgrim of peace to leaving a land of conflict with something to think about. Stay with us. After the break, we also get exclusive on-the-ground interviews with important figures in the Holy Land. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. At the conclusion of the trip to the Holy Land, Pope Francis celebrated Mass at the Cenacle, where Jesus held the Last Supper with his disciples. Before the Mass, we spoke with the Auxiliary Bishop of Jerusalem.
When John Paul II and Benedict XVI came, Masses were celebrated. But we have to ask permission. On a normal way, only visits are allowed to this place because it's a place which is contested and claimed by Israelis and Muslims at the same time. Muslims consider it as a mosque. Israelis say this is Tomb David area compound. It's ours after 48, so really the Vatican doesn't want sovereignty on that place. They want only to have sometimes in the day possibility of making prayers. But this Mass today is exceptional. It is not in the normal sequence of events for the daily basis use of the Synod. We hope that the Vatican will be able to have more usage, more hours of prayer in the early morning before the pilgrims start to come. So no one will be hurt by these 2 hours.
He was at the prayer of the Holy Sepulchre. This is what it was like for him.
Really, it was moving. It was moving, emotional. The humility of the Pope, the friendship which was born between the two, the Pope and the Patriarch of Constantinople, the atmosphere, the nature of people present in the Holy Sepulchre. It was historical in all the meaning. No one put in doubt, in question, the importance of this fact. But the fruits are unpredictable. We don't know what will result. But at least something will come up. Unification of Easter, we hope, of calendar of Easter, should be an immediate result of this. Immediate maybe within 2 years, but it should come without delay.
This is the birthplace of Christ, Bethlehem, and this, the Church of the Nativity, on the site where the child Jesus once slept in a manger. On May 25, the Vicar of Christ, Pope Francis, was just next to the church in the city's central square, celebrating Mass with 10,000 people, Christians from all over Palestine. The connection between Rome and Bethlehem is essential for the locals.
Bethlehem, and in Bethlehem, all has started. In Bethlehem, the origin of the message of peace was resurrected to the world. In the Vatican, it is the Church, St. Peter. All this message of Bethlehem can remain empowered and sustained by the other identity in the Vatican. It is a kind of a wombic relationship of connection, empowerment, and keeping the Star of Bethlehem enlightening. In other words, the Vatican can be the oil to keep the light of Bethlehem's star enlightened.
On this trip, the Vatican came to Bethlehem, concerned for the plight of children in areas of conflict and poverty.
Sadly, in this world, with all its highly developed technology, great numbers of children continue to live in inhuman situations, on the fringes of society, in the peripheries of great cities, and in the countryside. All too many children continue to be exploited, maltreated, enslaved, prey to violence and illicit trafficking. Still, too many children live in exile as refugees, at times lost at sea, particularly in the waters of the Mediterranean. Today, in acknowledging this, we feel shame before God who became a child. And we have to ask ourselves, who are we as we stand before the child Jesus? Who are we standing as we stand before today's children? Are we like Mary and Joseph, who welcomed Jesus and cared for him with the love of a father and a mother? Or are we like Herod, who wanted to eliminate him? The child Jesus, born in Bethlehem, every child who is born and grows up in every part of our world, is a diagnostic sign indicating the state of health of our families, our communities, our nations. Such a frank and honest diagnosis can lead us to a new kind of lifestyle where our relationships are no longer marked by conflict, oppression, and consumerism, but fraternity, forgiveness, and reconciliation, solidarity, and love.
Di consumismo, ma siano rapporti di fraternità, di perdono e riconciliazione, di condivisione e di amore.
Many of the Palestinians at Mass and their children live in situations where their land has been divided by the separation wall. Without special permission, they are unable to travel into Israel, even just the 5 miles to Jerusalem. Some family members have been killed in unrest. All suffer from the tension. The mayor of Bethlehem, the first woman ever to hold the position, told us before the Mass what she would be saying to the Pope when she met him.
Though your visit is religious and spiritual, but it is to the Holy Land. Your motto is the motto of oneness, let it be one. However, the Holy Land, the land of the 3 faiths, doesn't really live the practice of the real faith. What I tell him, for peace, we need courageous hearts. We need someone who masters speaking truth to power with a heart that is really brave, ability to speak the truth. I ask him to utter clearly that we need to live in justice. We need to be included. He said himself, Pope Francis, we need to work to restore hope and to include the excluded. We are excluded from justice. Why I ask him is to work to include us within justice.
Stay with us after the break. We continue with topics on the Holy Land, taking a look at our Catholic brothers, the Greek Melkite Catholics. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. A simple wish from Archbishop Joseph Syria. He's the head of one of the Eastern Catholic churches in Jerusalem, the Greek Catholics, and he deeply wants all Christians to be united.
It's a suffering, like I am suffering myself now. Of course, I'm Catholic today, but I'm really suffering in all my heart with this division. I hope all the hearts should be opened to more unity among all of us. Not, be careful, not to say we are one, only to say one.
That division dates back to the Great Schism of 1054, when the Church split into East and West, Orthodox and Roman Catholic. Greek Melkite Catholics were once Orthodox, that is, until the 1700s, when they came back into full communion with Rome.
The Greek Melkite Catholic Church is exactly like the Greek Orthodox Church from the beginning in the first centuries, but this Byzantine Church that began from Constantinople and Antioch and spread in all the Middle East in the first centuries, and Greece and Russia and Ukraine and many countries of the eastern countries in Europe. So this is the Byzantine Church in the first centuries. The Greek Catholic Church, Melkite Catholic Church, we began in 1724, beginning from Antioch, but the seat of Antioch was transferred to Damascus. So we say the Patriarchate of Damascus, of Antioch, I'm sorry, in Damascus now. So the bishops, the Synod in that time, with a certain influence from many Catholic missionaries, they found in 1724 to make the communion with the Catholic Church. This is how we began. We are now, after many emigrations, about 2 million all over the world, and we are in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, here in Israel and Palestine, in Egypt also, and in Europe, especially some parishes in France, in Italy, Belgium, and also in the diaspora, Canada, States, United States, America Latina, Latin America, and also in Australia.
For him, the initiative of the Common Prayer in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was important. He described Pope Francis' pilgrimage as a ray of light. That big step towards unity took place in the Holy City.
Certo, non possiamo negare le divisioni che ancora esistono tra di noi.
Clearly, we cannot deny the divisions which continue to exist among us, the disciples of Jesus. This sacred place makes us even more painfully aware of how tragic they are. And yet, 50 years after the embrace of those two venerable fathers, we realize, with gratitude and renewed amazement, how it was possible, at the prompting of the Holy Spirit, to take truly significant steps towards unity. We know that much distance still needs to be traveled before we attain that fullness of communion, which can also be expressed by sharing the same Eucharistic table, something we ardently desire. Yet our disagreements must not frighten us and paralyze our progress. We need to believe that just as the stone before the tomb was cast aside, so too every obstacle to our full communion will also be removed.
The one church, unity of the church, is to help all over the world who are looking for happiness. No happiness except the peace and love and happiness given to all of us in Jesus Christ.
The Armenian Orthodox Church, on the other hand, is not in full communion with Rome, but they still view Roman Catholics as their brothers.
We don't say the Latin, we say the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, we respect a lot the Catholic Church, not because It's a big church, it's a powerful church, but because it's one of the traditional churches, like the Armenian church, and then we respect more the system, the discipline that they have in the church. That's why we look forward to have close ties with Vatican, but here we are having good relations with the Catholics, with the Franciscans especially, Franciscan brothers, and the Latin Patriarch. We are very close friends. Actually, I am taking the Custos of the Franciscan Church here with me to Armenia next month.